She didn't even flinch when I said her name. She just kept stirring the honey into her tea, slow, methodical circles, like she was drawing out time itself. The spoon clinked against the ceramic 3 times before she looked up. "I need to tell you something," she said. The air in the room thickened. Not because of what she said. No, that phrase gets tossed around too often. It was how she said it. Hollow. Empty. As if the words were bricks she'd been holding in her mouth for years. I didn't nod. Didn't speak. Just blinked once. And then she began. "Michael isn't yours." It didn't register at first. I thought she meant the dishes. Like, maybe I hadn't dried the ones Michael used. Or that I'd forgotten to return one of his borrowed books. Something trivial. Safe. But then she added, "I mean, biologically." I dropped the teacup. But it didn't shatter. It hit the toe of my slipper, rolled gently, and came to rest against the kitchen cabinet. The honey spoon stayed in her hand. There was no screaming. There was no gasp. Just the soft whir of the fridge motor and the slow realization that nothing I believed about my past 37 years was as solid as I thought. She continued talking, but I heard nothing. Her lips moved. Her hands gestured. There might have been tears, but I honestly can't recall. I just stared at the cabinet door and imagined the cup cracking against it. The way truth cracks through a marriage, slow at first, then all at once. Michael, not mine. She had given birth to him while I held her hand. I cut the cord. I cried in that hospital room like an idiot, babbling about how his ears looked like hers. And now she was telling me that somewhere, floating in the background of our life, there was another man whose DNA had woven itself into the child I raised. I stood up. Too fast. The chair scraped against the floor so loudly it startled the cat. Still, I said nothing. I walked to the window. It was raining. I didn't know when that had started. Then I asked the only question my mouth would allow. "Who?" She didn't answer. Not right away. Because it wasn't one name. It was 3. And that was only the beginning. She took a deep breath before saying the first name. "Gordon," she whispered, like it was a confession to a priest. I didn't know a Gordon. At least, I didn't think I did. She quickly followed with the second. "Silas." That one hit harder. Silas was our former neighbor from way back, 2 streets over, blue shutters, always wore socks with sandals. We had dinner at their house one 4th of July. I remember the burgers were undercooked. But it was the third name that carved a hole straight through me. Trent. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the edge of the counter to keep myself upright. Trent was my cousin. My cousin, the one who used to spend summers with us when we lived near Lake Olin. The one who'd crashed on our couch when he went through his divorce. The one who'd sent us a baby shower card signed. "Uncle Trent. Can't wait to meet my little champ." I turned to face her then. I remember my mouth opening, but no words coming out. Just the sound of my breathing, ragged and shallow, like someone had punched me in the lungs. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She just stared at her tea, now cold. "It was before we were married," she said, softly. "All 3, within the same month." I didn't know who it was. I thought it didn't matter because once you proposed, I wanted that life. I wanted you. I walked out of the kitchen and sat down on the stairs. I felt like I was sliding off the map of my own life. I had taken pride in being a good man. Not rich, not exciting, but dependable. I packed lunches, repaired leaking faucets, stayed up late for sick kids, drove carpools, bought Christmas presents on sale. I had built my whole existence around her and our children. And now the foundation was gone. I didn't speak for hours. I just sat there, staring at the pictures on the wall. Our wedding day, Michael in kindergarten, all of us at Yellowstone. So many smiles, so many memories. Were they all edited fiction now? When night fell, she came and sat beside me, holding one of the journals I hadn't read yet. She didn't say anything, just handed it to me, the ribbon still tied. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I asked her only one thing. "Does Michael know?" She shook her head slowly. "No. I was going to tell you first." Tell me first? As if that somehow made it better? As if this was a secret that could be portioned out like slices of cake? I got up, walked into the guest bedroom, and locked the door behind me. For the first time in 37 years, I didn't sleep beside her. I couldn't even close my eyes. My thoughts ran in circles. The betrayal, the names, the smile Michael inherited. Was it even mine? But even in that sleepless night, I didn't know what was coming next. Because the next morning, an email arrived. It was from someone I never expected. And the subject line was only 2 words. "It's me." The email sat at the top of my inbox like a loaded weapon. No greeting. No subject beyond those two cold words. It's me. The sender's name wasn't familiar, at least not at first. It read, Travis P. Monroe. I almost deleted it. I thought it was spam. I mean, who sends something that vague and expects a reply? But then I opened it. There wasn't a long message inside. Just one short paragraph. Hi. You don't know me, but I think you're my father. My mother is Arlene Monroe. She told me last month. I'm not here to cause problems. I just want to know who I really am. I've attached a photo. I hope you'll look. I read the paragraph again. And again. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My mother is Arlene Monroe. That was my wife's maiden name. Monroe. She hadn't used it since 1986. She hadn't even spoken of it in years. I stared at the name Travis. I tried to remember, had she ever mentioned a Travis? The name sounded distant, meaningless. Then I clicked the attachment. And that's when everything inside me seemed to tilt off center. The face looking back at me could have been mine at 25. Same uneven eyebrows. Same slope of the jaw. Even the small mole near the ear. I had one just like it. I gasped. Out loud. Alone in the guest bedroom. I scrolled down to see the metadata. The photo was recent, taken maybe a few months ago. Travis looked to be about 35, which lined up. Almost exactly. A year before Michael was born. Was he saying Arlene had another child? One she never told me about? I stood up so fast the chair squeaked against the hardwood. My legs were weak. I walked back into the hallway and just stared at the locked door to our bedroom. I didn't knock. I didn't speak. I just stood there, breathing heavily, trying not to fall apart. And then the memories started to whisper. The weekend she went back to visit her aunt in '88. The 2-week silence after we had a huge fight when I suggested starting a family. The way she used to flinch when I mentioned adoption, always brushing it off like it was something unnatural. My hands trembled. I needed answers. More than anything, I needed her to tell me the truth, all of it. Not just pieces wrapped in journals or sealed inside silence. I forwarded the email to her. No subject. Just a question in the body. Did you lie about this too? I didn't expect her to answer right away. But I heard her footsteps less than a minute later, padding down the hallway toward the guest room. She knocked once. Softly. I can explain, she said. I didn't say anything. There's more, she added. A lot more. And then she did something that chilled me to the core. She slipped an envelope under the door. A thick one. Inside were 4 photographs, none of them I had ever seen before. One was of her, holding a baby. Another showed her with a man I didn't recognize. The third was a birth certificate. And the fourth was a check. A copy of one. Anyway. A canceled check with my name forged on the bottom. It was dated 1990, and it had been written to the man in the photograph. The man Arlene swore she hadn't spoken to in decades. At that moment, I realized this wasn't a 37-year-old secret. This was a 37-year-long operation. And I was the last to know. The envelope didn't lie. The man in the photo wore a gray wool coat, black-rimmed glasses, and had a birthmark near his right temple. His name was scribbled in fading pen on the back of the picture, Howard G. I didn't recognize him. At least, not until I checked the birth certificate. Place of birth, Cedar Grove, Iowa. Hospital, St. Edith's General. Date, May 14, 1989. Mother, Arlene May Monroe. Father, Howard Grantley. There it was. The part that didn't make sense, not yet, was the check. It had my name on it. My signature forged like someone tried to copy it in a hurry. The amount? $5,000. Memo line. Final payment. My chest went cold. I stared at it like it might transform into something else if I blinked enough times. But it didn't. It just sat there, mocking me. Final payment? For what? Was it a bribe? A payoff? For silence? For custody? For adoption? I stormed out of the room and found Arlene sitting on the edge of our bed, head in her hands, that same blank expression she had the night she told me about Michael. I held up the check. Explain this. She didn't look surprised. In fact, she looked relieved, like she'd been holding her breath for decades and finally exhaled. I didn't think you'd ever find that name, she said quietly. Howard. I asked. Who is he? Why did you pay him? Why did you forge my name? Her answer came like slow poison. Because Howard was going to tell you. About everything. And I couldn't let that happen. Not back then. What do you mean, everything? I asked. My voice cracked. She stood up. Howard was more than just Travis's father. He was part of it all. He was the one I went to for help when I thought I was pregnant with Michael. He's the one who convinced me to bury it. All of it. He knew about the others. About Silas. About Trent. My knees nearly buckled. And Travis? I asked. He's your son? You hid an entire child from me. She nodded. He wasn't supposed to come looking. I never told him about you. I never wanted him to ruin your life. I tried to make it right. I sent money. I sent letters. My voice broke. You sent money, but you never sent love. She looked at me like that truth hurt her more than the accusation. Maybe it did. Maybe she believed her own version of things for so long she forgot what real love even looked like. And the signature? I asked. Why fake my name? She lowered her eyes. Because he wouldn't take it otherwise. He thought if he saw your name on it, it would mean forgiveness. I stared at her. And in that moment, I realized she hadn't just kept secrets, she had choreographed a performance. An entire marriage staged around a lie, kept upright with forged trust and expired apologies. I left the house. I didn't take a bag, just grabbed my coat and walked out into the cold. My phone buzzed in my pocket the moment I reached the end of the driveway. It was an email. From Travis again. This time with no subject. No pleasantries. Just 5 words that stopped me dead in my tracks. I think she lied again. I didn't go far. I drove around aimlessly for hours. First past the pharmacy, then down toward the lake, the one where Arlene and I used to walk after dinner when our girls were still young and believed in fairy tales. The streets looked the same, but everything inside me was rearranged. I kept hearing Travis's words from the email over and over. I think she lied again. When I finally pulled over, it was at the parking lot of the public library. I hadn't set foot in there since the year dial-up internet was still a thing. I sat in the car, opened my phone, and clicked on Travis's name. His message was short, but the attachment, it was massive. He had found a file. Apparently, during his own search for the truth, he'd requested documents from the Iowa Department of Public Health. What he received was more than just his birth certificate. There were court documents, custody orders, and one shocking form titled Amendment of Parental Record. I scrolled, heart pounding. The document said that in 1991, 2 years after Travis was born, the biological father listed on record, Howard Grantley, had voluntarily relinquished his parental rights to someone else. My name, Curtis W. Beal. My full legal name, printed neatly on a document I had never seen before. Signed, dated, notarized, with a typed note at the bottom. To be kept confidential per request of the mother. My breath caught. How? Why? I searched for an explanation in the digital scan, but the pages were bare bones, bureaucratic, cold. No context. Just paper proof that at some point in time, I had legally been made Travis's father without ever knowing. I called Travis. I don't even remember pressing the numbers. I just knew I needed answers and I needed his voice. He answered on the second ring. He sounded cautious. Worn out. I didn't want to blindside you, he said. I only found that file yesterday. I've been digging. Everything my mom ever told me, it was half-truths. Some things match. Others don't. I asked him what he meant. He sighed. She said you weren't involved. That you didn't want anything to do with me. That she protected you from the shame. I nearly dropped the phone. What shame? She said you asked her not to keep me. I went quiet. Dead silent. She said you offered her money to go away. That it was the cleanest way forward. My jaw clenched. My pulse throbbed in my ears. That's not true. I whispered. I figured as much, he said. Because if it was, why would you be listed as my legal guardian 2 years later? I stared at the dashboard, unable to blink. That forged check. The signature. The year. 1990. And now this amendment, filed quietly in 1991. She had used my name for more than just money. She had used it to rewrite the truth. I thanked Travis and hung up. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the courthouse downtown and requested a public records search on myself. The clerk, a woman in her 60s with red reading glasses, asked me to wait. 20 minutes later, she returned with a manila envelope. Inside was a copy of the full amendment file. My forged signature again. Witnessed by a name I hadn't seen in years, Janelle Hargrove. My sister's best friend. I remembered Janelle. She was a notary public back then. And she'd always liked Arlene more than me. And suddenly, something clicked. Arlene hadn't just hidden a child. She had erased a father. Me. And not just with Travis. As I flipped through the file, a smaller document slid out from between the pages. It was dated 1993. It named me as the father of a second child. a name I didn't recognize, and neither did Travis. It felt like holding a stranger's life in my hands. I stood there in the courthouse corridor, fluorescent lights buzzing above me, the sealed beige envelope now opened and splayed across a gray metal bench. My fingers trembled as I picked up the final sheet. It was thinner than the others, like it had been added last minute, nearly missed by whoever compiled the file. In the upper left corner was a typed title: Secondary Guardian Declaration, August 1993. Underneath that, name of child Avery Monroe Garrison. Date of birth July 3, 1993. Mother Arlene Mae Monroe. Father unknown. Legal guardian appointed Curtis Wendell Beale. I read the name over and over. Avery Monroe Garrison. Garrison? That wasn't our family name. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Arlene's married name either. And yet, there it was, right beside mine, as if some deal had been struck in a backroom courtroom where I wasn't invited. What chilled me wasn't just the fact that Arlene had a second child I'd never heard of. It was the phrasing. Guardian. Not father. Not stepfather. Just guardian. As if I had been assigned a child like a postal route. I staggered to my feet and left the building, the file pressed to my chest like it might vanish if I let it go. I didn't drive home. I went to the cemetery. Not to visit anyone. Just to sit. It was quiet there. It always was. And the silence gave me enough space to finally say out loud what I'd been thinking for the past 24 hours. Who the hell did I marry? Because if Arlene could keep 2 children from me, forge documents, invent stories, bury entire lives, then who was the woman I woke up beside for 37 years? Who was the mother of my children, the woman who smiled in every family photo, who made lasagna on birthdays and sang along to Fleetwood Mac in the car like nothing had ever gone wrong? My phone buzzed. It was a message from Travis. You okay? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then I did something I hadn't done since this all began. I told someone the truth. No, I'm not. He called me immediately. I just got out of work, he said. Want me to come meet you? I told him where I was. He arrived 20 minutes later in a beat-up silver sedan, looking just as hollow as I felt. We didn't hug. We didn't shake hands. We just sat on a bench across from a row of headstones and stared at the horizon. Do you know her? I finally asked. Avery. He shook his head. First I've heard of her. I'm listed as her guardian, I said. Since 1993. I never signed anything. Never saw her. Never even heard her name. Travis went quiet for a long time. Then, very softly, he said, I think there were more. I turned to look at him. She used to disappear, he said. When I was little. I thought it was normal. Every couple months, she'd go stay with someone. Sometimes she said it was a friend. Sometimes it was a work trip. But she always came back looking different. Worn out. But not sad. Just tired. Detached. The pieces were forming a picture, one I didn't want to see. Travis looked down at his hands. She told me once that people were just puzzle pieces. Some fit. Some don't. But if you're the one with the puzzle box, no one gets to see the whole picture except you. My stomach turned. That sounded exactly like her. Private to the point of secrecy. Intimate when she wanted to be, cold when it suited her. Always holding back something. I pulled out the photo of Avery from the file, a black and white hospital record image, wrinkled and faded. She had her mother's chin. My nose. Or maybe I just wanted to see myself in it. Maybe that was the lie I'd been trained to believe, that any resemblance meant connection. I stood up. I need to find her. Travis nodded. I'll help you. He paused before adding, but what if she doesn't want to be found? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure which would hurt more. Finding her, or learning she already knew who I was. And chose not to care. It took 6 days. 6 days of calling public offices, filling out digital request forms, searching forums for the smallest thread, praying someone somewhere had left a clue. Most people would have given up after day 2, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not when I knew now that I had a daughter walking around this country, raised without my knowledge, likely carrying wounds I didn't create, but somehow still feeling responsible for them. What broke me wasn't the silence. It was the possibility that she might already know about me and had chosen never to reach out. Travis helped in ways I didn't expect. He handled the digital legwork, emails, databases, even an old high school yearbook site. He had a knack for searching. A stubborn curiosity. I guess he got that from me, even if it wasn't written in his blood. On the evening of the 6th day, he knocked on my motel room door. His face told me before his mouth did. I found her, he said. He passed me his laptop. A profile page from an alumni registry. Avery Monroe Garrison. Class of 2011. Current city, Denver, Colorado. Profession, art therapist. Attached photo, a woman with shoulder-length dark hair, kind eyes, and a smile that looked familiar. Too familiar. Her practice has a website, Travis added. She works with trauma survivors. Children mostly. I stared at the screen in disbelief. She looked strong. Stable. Like someone who had built herself from the inside out. Do I call? I asked. She has a contact form, Travis said. I already drafted something. You can read it first. I did. It was simple, respectful. Just enough to open a door without barging in. I hit send before I could overthink it. The reply came the next morning. It wasn't from her assistant. It wasn't a generic rejection. It was from Avery herself. The subject line read, "I've been expecting this." My hand shook as I opened the email. Her tone was calm, almost too calm. She wrote, "I always knew someone named Curtis Beale existed. My mother told me in pieces. I wasn't sure what was true and what was manipulation. But yes, I've known about you. For years. I even tried to find you once. Then stopped. I assumed if you hadn't reached out, maybe you never knew about me at all." There was no accusation. No venom. Just a quiet undercurrent of pain that hit harder than anger ever could. She ended with this. "If you want to meet, I won't stop you. But I don't know what I'm ready for. My life is full, and I've worked very hard to make peace with my origins. I have one question first. Why now?" I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what not to say. I couldn't offer hollow apologies or say I would have done things differently. I couldn't erase the years. So I wrote. Because I've finally learned the truth. Because I want to know you without the lies. And because I've spent 37 years loving someone who never gave me the whole story, and I'm tired of missing pieces. She responded later that night. One sentence. "I'll see you Sunday, 10 a.m., Civic Park, by the fountain." I flew to Denver the next morning. Travis came with me, not to meet her, but to be nearby, just in case. We shared a hotel room. Didn't talk much. I didn't sleep. That Sunday morning, I arrived at Civic Park 15 minutes early. It was bright and loud, kids on scooters, dogs chasing frisbees, someone practicing guitar on a bench near the fountain. I stood awkwardly by the water, trying not to check my watch every 30 seconds. And then I saw her. She was wearing a green coat, jeans, and walking with slow, careful steps. Her face was unreadable. But when she got close, she stopped and said two words I'll never forget. "You're taller." I laughed, but it caught in my throat. She smiled tight, nervous. And then her eyes welled up. Not out of sadness. Out of exhaustion. Recognition. Relief. We sat on a nearby bench and talked. For 3 hours. About nothing. About everything. Childhoods. Music. Places we'd both been but never at the same time. She told me her favorite color used to be gray because it was safe. She told me her mother had moods she never understood and rules that changed day to day. I listened. Until she finally said, "You know, I used to hate your name because it felt like a ghost. Now I don't." I nodded, unable to speak. Then she said something that cracked the final wall between us. "I'm glad you came, but you're not the only one who's looking for answers." "What do you mean?" I asked. She opened her purse and handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo. A boy, maybe 16, dark hair, bright eyes, holding a skateboard. "His name's Connor," she said. "And I think he's mine." I stared at the photo for what felt like hours. My brain couldn't process it all at once. The boy's face, the subtle details, the timing. Connor, 16. Born around 2009, if I was guessing right. That would have made Avery barely in her mid-teens at the time. My pulse spiked, not with anger or shame, but with something deeper, worry. Avery saw my expression and gently placed her hand on the bench between us, not touching mine, but close. "I found out when I was 18, she said. "He lives with my aunt, my mom's sister. She took him in when I was too young to keep him. I didn't have a say in it then. I do now." I nodded slowly. "Does he know who you are?" She hesitated. "He thinks I'm his cousin. But he's starting to ask questions. Especially now that he's applying for things, IDs, school stuff. I don't want him growing up inside another lie." The weight of her words crushed something open inside me. I knew that feeling too well, the corrosive erosion of a life built on half-truths. "Then let's tell him," I said. Her eyes widened slightly. "Together?" "Yes, together." For the first time since all this began, something settled inside me. Not everything had to be repaired. Not every wound needed stitching. But this moment, this step, could be the beginning of something honest. We didn't rush. We took time. Over the next several weeks, Avery and I met up again. In cafes, bookstores, parks. Some days we didn't even talk about the past, just movies, favorite foods, strange dreams. She had a dry, smart sense of humor. She hated coffee but loved the smell of it. She doodled in the margins of her notebook when she was nervous, something I used to do when I was her age. And Connor, we met him on a Wednesday afternoon in late spring. He was taller than I expected, confident, a little guarded. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye. I didn't know what to say, so I told him the truth. I'm still trying to figure this out too. He grinned. That's fair. Avery told him everything that day. I let her lead. He listened, quiet, serious, absorbing every word. When she finished, he sat back and simply said, okay. Not angry, not overwhelmed, just ready. Then he turned to me and asked, so does this make you my grandfather? I blinked hard. If that's what you want it to mean. He smiled. Cool. Can I still call you Curtis, though? Grandpa makes you sound like you need help opening cereal boxes. We laughed, all three of us. And in that moment, the fog lifted. A month later, Arlene called me. I almost didn't pick up, but I did. Her voice was smaller than I remembered. We talked. For a long time. She didn't justify. She didn't beg. She said she was sorry, genuinely. She admitted she had lived her life afraid of losing control, and that fear led her to manipulate the people closest to her. I know I can't fix it, she said, but I'm glad you found them. Avery and Travis. And Connor, too. There was a pause. Then she said, I hope you're happy. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to lie. I am. I told her. It's been 8 months now. Avery and I still meet for breakfast every Sunday. Travis comes sometimes, too. Connor and I started building a chessboard together in my garage, something I used to dream of doing with Michael when he was little. And last week, for the first time in 37 years, I looked in the mirror and didn't see a man who'd been lied to. I saw a man who survived it. And finally started living the truth.